Welcome to the Hirewell Recruiting Insights podcast. I'm your host, James Hornick, partner at Hirewell. I'd like to welcome a special guest, speaker, startup advisor, revenue consultant, and as I found, super popular on LinkedIn, Ashley Quinto Powell.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. I'm glad you got it. You definitely have a strong following. I was really impressed, a little bit intimidated. I started watching some of your videos online. It was great because we do a lot of these podcasts with people who, all different types of people within kind of recruiting, HR, hiring, and stuff like that. And some are natural speakers, some aren't. So I do a lot of prep. And then I saw you. I'm like, I'm not going to have to do a whole lot today.
You're very kind. You know, I spend a lot of my Friday nights also watching videos of me. So you're in good company.
So guys, we're going to try to do our best to answer questions. It's always been a pain with these LinkedIn Live formats because the comments don't actually come through to the streaming platform we use. We have to watch on a separate feed. So if you see me playing on my phone, it's either Instagram or I'm following the feed that we're using and trying to keep up with comments. So any questions, hit us up. We're going to talk about salary negotiation today.
Yep. It's one of my favorite subjects.
So I guess before we maybe do that, do you want to give everyone a quick overall overview of your background, like what it is you do, what your expertise is?
So I am a revenue consultant, and I help small businesses and startups with service-based offerings do sales better and sort of take the cringe out of their sales materials. And then for years, I've been a speaker on salary negotiation, often really specifically for tech and women and people of color. I now speak nationally on salary negotiation and executive motherhood, community building, a couple other topics. I'm really passionate about self-advocacy and helping people make more money, whether that's for themselves or for their businesses.
So one of the other reasons why I was really excited to have you on is because salary negotiation is something I've been involved with my entire career. Mm-hmm. But thinking about it, it's always been as more of an intermediary. So I've seen how things can go really wrong in negotiations. But then at the same time, I haven't had any personal experience. I haven't had to negotiate something myself. I've been here for 15 years. Sure. So there's definitely a difference there so I'm kind of curious if from you, obviously, maybe to kick this off, like why is it important to negotiate and why is it a struggle for so many people?
Well, the stuff that I talk about is directed at women and people of color really specifically because the advice that people tend to give is the same advice that works for white men. And that's not always the stuff that works for everybody. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. I promise that your work as an intermediary in the staffing industry will have made you an expert. And so the next time you go to negotiate for yourself, you'll be great because where I got a lot of the practical advice that I give is from working in staffing for 8 or 10 years and working with clients on behalf of consultants, with consultants on behalf of clients, for myself, with my team. And then when I started working for smaller firms, if you wanted to do business with our firm, you had to negotiate with me. And so I think you'll do great. It is important to negotiate because we're leaving money on the table. And it's more than just the opportunity to take a vacation, for instance. It can mean more money in our 401k so that we retire more comfortably when we're 80. It can mean the better ability to generate wealth for our kids and our grandkids. It's just really important that that right now we're doing everything that we can to move forward.
Okay. Is there, what was I going to say, where do things break? I know people are oftentimes, kind of money makes people nervous. You know what I mean? Talking about it makes people nervous. That's half the thing is probably just getting people to talk about it more. But anything that you think someone gets an offer, right? What should they do at that point? If they're just getting an offer blindly, they're not working through a recruiter, so they haven't talked about salary ranges. What do they need to look out for, and kind of what's the first thing they should kind of have in mind?
Sure. Well, a lot of the advice that I give is around collaborative negotiation. So a great way to approach a negotiation is to say something like, hey, I am so excited about the work. I really liked the hiring manager that I met with, and I think the people that I would be working with are amazing, and I really want to get to a point where it makes sense for me to accept this offer. Right now, as it stands, it doesn't work perfectly well. I was really hoping for something more like X. Can you help me get there?
Yeah. I think negotiation 101, if having leverage versus not having leverage, you know what I mean? Like the things that always help in any kind of negotiation, if you have other offers or if your current salary, we can talk about the no salary history law in general. You know, I think in some cases it makes sense to talk about where you're at currently because that's another reason. But if someone, beyond asking the question or beyond that, if someone doesn't have like a leverage point, is there any other advice you can kind of give starting out? Because I do want to talk about how people can maybe better if you have other offers and stuff on the table, what steps you could take at that point. But without having another offer, anything on top of, you know, just asking and seeing what they can do.
Sure. Well, you always have leverage. I think the problem with being a job seeker is that it's mostly set up so that the cards are stacked against you. You're always against other people. You're up against a recruiter or a hiring manager who has done this lots and lots of times, and they're less emotionally involved because they're working on behalf of a company.
Yeah.
When it's you negotiating on behalf of yourself and your family, and there's a lot of pressure, and emotionally it's really tough, and it's very difficult to get two offers at the same time. And of course, that's a better option, but you always have the leverage of you don't have to take this job. It doesn't have to work out. And I think people really lose sight of that because I have met with a lot of people, and I do salary negotiation coaching one-on-one where people can spend an hour with me and get up to speed and have a strategy and a plan. But I meet with lots of people who are totally lowballed, and they begin with the assumption that they are absolutely positively going to need to get this offer where they want it. And they get to say no at any time. You take a big risk when you join a company, and you don't need it. I mean, as much as you think you do, you don't need to take this job. And if they're going to lowball you, it means they don't understand your value. We're in the best job market of our lifetimes.
I would say, so one thing I wanted to say on that is that, because I've seen, being kind of an intermediaries recruiter, I've seen a lot of different kind of scenarios where I'd say the conversations I have in negotiation over the years have been with companies and explaining to them what the market is. I think that there's, when you get a lowball offer, it sucks and you're a lot of times disappointed. But I think all good companies, I think, how you're going to find good companies up to you, want to make good offers. You know, they want employees to be happy. They want to bring them on board. The challenge is that a lot of them have just a lack of understanding of what that looks like. You'd be shocked. I mean, you're not shocked, but people would be shocked to know how little most companies have, especially small to medium-sized businesses. If this is a new hire, a new skill set they've never hired for before, they just don't know what the market is. So I've seen a lot of things where, our job has been to, client comes back, they're making an offer that's pretty low, and my first reaction is we can't even extend this, and it's more of a talking them through it and helping them understand what the market is, and even before it even gets to the candidate, making sure that's kind of been addressed. I can see a lot of scenarios when you're not working through an intermediary and you don't have any market knowledge as a company, and then you make a lowball offer. You have situations where a candidate, things should work out, but it was so off-putting to the candidate that it just kind of falls flat. And I think there's a difference between companies that have good intentions that just don't know, you know what I mean? They're just a little bit ignorant versus others. And there are companies out there that are just terrible. They're going to lowball you all day. So.
Well, it's one of those things. I mean, it's, again, an example of when it's you as an individual, it is painful.
Yeah.
The worst that would happen to a company who extended an offer that was too low is that the market would quickly teach them that nobody's going to say yes to that. But if it's you, it's horrifying to receive a lowball offer. And you know what? Honestly, I can hardly blame a company for trying to see what they can get for the money that they have. I have seen, I'm thinking of a very specific example where a company that I was very friendly with was looking for a new, like exactly what you've laid out. It was not a position that they had ever had on staff before. It was pretty critical. They were really excited about it, and they wanted the absolute moon.
Yeah.
And the salary range that they were talking about was silly.
Yeah.
And it was like a topic of conversation. Like, they are literally never going to find someone to do that job for that money, and they did.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
my follow up be how long did that last though? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
did that person bounce in 6 months because they realized, but yeah, it's you bring up a great point though, because even I think as a recruiter, like I talk about money and salary and stuff all day. It's something I'm used to, and it's something that it's a conversation I'm comfortable with. But I understand. I've always said that a job change it's one of the top 5 most stressful things in your life. There's getting married, having kids, dealing with buying a house, dealing with the death of a parent or something, and then changing jobs. And I think that having a plan for how to go about it is something that's going to help a lot of people out. So, one question I had for you. So, I'm always big on in everything really a transparent approach, and there's some people. When I talk about kind of using leverage, if you end up having multiple offers or whatnot, like I'll talk every once in a while. I'll talk with someone who clearly what I believe is just bad advice. Meaning they have a bunch of offers, but they don't want to tell anybody what the details of these offers are. They don't want to make a decision until like a company comes back and whereas to me it's like it seems obvious that if you have other things, like you want to pick the company that you like the most, the one you actually want to work for, and you just want to kind of articulate to them, here's what else I've got, this is what else I'm looking at, love to work with you guys. Are there any, that's just kind of high level for me, but like in situations where you do have multiple offers, like what is there a process you advise people go through to, I guess, negotiate the best offer from the place they want to go to?
Sure. A lot. And pretty recently I had a coaching client who was going through sort of exactly that. She was looking at 3 different options, and they had luckily come in at basically the same time. And when we started talking, she said, I don't know which one I want to pick. And the times that I have gone through that exact scenario, we always talk through it, and there is one front runner that emerges at the end. And working closely with that company, and yes, absolutely, laying out the details of those other offers is key to having a really collaborative conversation. Because I really think the key to a great negotiation is being able to say at the end, either we did everything that we could, it didn't work out, we're both pretty happy. Next time, absolutely, the option is still open. Or, you know what, we determined what was important to me, what was important to you. We worked it out, and I am super excited to work with you, and you're super excited to work with me. A lot of times, women in particular are uncomfortable negotiating because they don't want to no longer be seen as a team player or be seen as aggressive, which we know is different when women are aggressive than when men are aggressive. And so this tactic allows someone to preserve the relationship that they've built through the interview process, and really come to work like a respected and collaborative person.
Okay. I'm trying to think what else. Are there any other... Oh, we had one question I wanted to ask you. I actually talked with someone recently, and knowing that we had this conversation coming up, I actually didn't know how to answer this one. I didn't have a good answer off the top of my head, and I think I'll just lay this one up to you. Speaking with someone specifically, what do you do when you find out your predecessor made significantly more than you? Meaning you're in a role, and the person who is in this role made 20, 30K more than you're making. This person in particular loves her job, and was told by her superiors that she's better than the person who was there before. But then she found out, because she was actually close with that person told her what he was making. You know what I mean? So she knows, and then she knows that she's doing a better job. She knows what that person was making. How do you address that?
That's a great question. And this happens all the time. It's occasionally I'll hear that a woman left a job and was replaced by 2 or 3 people. And it's sort of the same, we are overperforming and we are being underpaid. In this scenario, what I would really strongly suggest is that she bring that to the people that she works for in a really kind way, and say and leave the door open for an explanation. And that can hopefully be worked into giving her a bump. So something that sounds very much like, hey, I love the work that I do. And also, I've heard you say a couple times that I am so much better than my predecessor. I do understand that I'm making a significantly different amount. And I'm wondering what the reasoning is behind that, and if there's a plan in place now to change it.
I like it. It's a nice way. Yeah, no, it's a good way of laying it out there. And in a very non-aggressive, you know what I mean, kind of it's
it
good.
may be something too, like I mean, they absolutely may have an explanation that she isn't even thinking of. For instance, we gave you 4 weeks more vacation. I'm just making that up. I really hope that that's the case. We give you something that we didn't give him, and he was compensated for that, or something. There may be some very plausible explanation that isn't worth her getting mad about.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons I feel so strongly that you need to address these things with your employer head on is because that festers as an employee and becomes really toxic. Yeah. And that's what you want to avoid. You want to always have these open relationships with your employer, and your employer can't really change something unless they know that it's a problem for you.
We've talked a lot here about like the no salary history law that was passed. I'm curious, and I have some certain thoughts about it. I think that we're very much in favor of it. I think it's an extremely positive thing, and should do a lot, but not be a total fix, obviously, for salary and equity and stuff like that. I'm curious what thoughts you have. Is there any way that people should change the way they go about? Obviously, they don't have to disclose what they're making now, but is there any change the way they should think about salary negotiation, or how big of a game changer do you think it is in general?
I think it's a game changer, but I think it is, it's not the end. And I have certainly had people who say to me, well, now that's a place I don't have to negotiate my salary. And I think that is absolutely wrong. It just allows people to come in at a different place, at the beginning of the negotiation. So and also I would say it applies to everyone. So, I've certainly negotiated myself with employees coming in who are just absolute blowhards, who tell me that they are the best thing since, and I've hired salespeople. So you have to imagine that I've hired a lot of people who were the absolute best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. They're going to do everything that they can to be amazing. Right. I mean, they're huge puffed chests, and they want me to pay them $1 million and also give them their shirt off my back. So those people are also not tied to giving a salary history. Yeah. And so we're still competing on a level playing field with other candidates. So I think it's still important to be strong self-advocates.
I think that, and not to go off on the tangent too, the issue, the concern I have with companies, we already talked a little bit about how companies are, a lot of them, they're I hate using the term ignorant, but a lot of companies just don't have a lot of good data points. They don't know what certain positions should be paid to begin with. And it's not to fault of their own. You got a lot of entrepreneurs out there. They're experts in a lot of things, and this is stuff they're going to pick up. But when you add in the fact of, I think the no salary history law makes it more important for companies to better understand what the market is, because they have to be better at assessments. You can't use the BS approach of asking someone what they're making and I'm going to, add 10%. How's that for an offer? Like, you have to actually be able to assess skill sets. And that can be both positive and negative. Positive from the standpoint, if you were underpaid, this is your chance to knock the interview out of the park. That doesn't matter if you were underpaid before. If you were paid what you should, or maybe a little bit overpaid and you blow the interview, it's gonna be hard for them to make an offer even where you are. So I think there's lots gonna be shaken out between companies being better at making assessments as well as better data being provided, or I think it's an opportunity for companies in that space to make it easier to gain good data, I guess, about salary.
Well, I think also a company like yours could probably help an employer understand what the market will bear. The other two sources that I usually give are ONET Online, which is onetonline.org, or salary.com. Actually, I've been really impressed with how salary.com gives data points without signing you up for a million newsletters.
Yeah. We did because we do twice a year, we're doing salary kind of evaluations. But the thing is, what we did was we took data from 6 or 7 of the most common salary sites, then used kind of our own data, and try to figure out a weighted average. First thing we found out is a lot of these sites are completely different in their numbers, So I'll take a closer look at salary.com if you think that one's the best, because depending on certain skill sets, the breakdowns are different, and you just don't know which ones are good and which ones were just kind of made up, or where they pulled their data from to come to these decisions. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm always I'll be curious to see how that space evolves, because especially if this takes off across the country, if more states start doing this, you know what I mean, there's gonna be more demand for better data.
Yeah, I hope they do. I think it would be an outstanding change. And as you know, the work isn't quite done, and it's a great starting point.
Okay. Is there, I'm trying to think what else I wanted to talk with you about. Do you have any advice for the employer side of it? You know, is there, I know you're mostly like an advocate for people and self-advocate, but is there anything do you ever talk to companies and why they should make better offers? And you know what I mean? Is there anything that, I always like to look at it from kind of both sides. I don't know if you do any work in that space, or any wisdom you could drop on us. So.
Well, from the employer side, I think it's really important to build good cultures. And, I come from tech, where the employment market is so tight. Mm-hmm. And I really think that it has been cannibalized by having such a small percentage of people that are unemployed, and such a large percentage of passive job seekers. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is that a lot of software developers, for instance, are poached quite a bit. The length of time that someone will be at a company is significantly shorter, and so the culture becomes more and more important. You just can't have a bad culture, especially in tech anymore. And there are some really outstanding and creative perks. Yeah. One of the things that I like locally in Chicago is something called the Lisa app, that brings in personal care services like haircuts and manicures. And I think that it's so brilliant, actually, because it sort of, and this is no part of their marketing, but I think it acknowledges the shadow work that women do to get prepared for a work day. Okay. Having your nails done, having your hair done. I don't know if you know this, James, but I am not a natural blonde. And every time I go to my hairstylist, my husband freaks out, because I think he spends absolutely zero money. He has the same haircut that you do.
Yeah. So he does it himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Lisa app is something that will help you bring that into your workspace. It's a beautiful acknowledgement of sort of the work that women do to get ready for the workday, that men don't have to do. There are also things like Kilter Rewards. Okay. Is a startup out of my hometown, Madison, Wisconsin.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out. That rewards people for working out and being healthy. But my point is, there are some very, very clever things that employers can do that don't cost any money, that build culture. Another shout out I'll give is something called The Perk, which works with companies on cultures very specifically, and building very, very, very strong cultures, I think, is so important.
Absolutely.
And that'll beat salary anytime.
Yeah, that's the thing is too, is that it's not always, we're talking about salary negotiation, but I'll be the first. It's not the place that offers you the most money isn't always the best place to work. You want to get you have to always be thinking in terms of salary long term. And there are some companies that overpay, frankly, because they have to, because they're not a good culture, they're not a good place to work. And you can find out what these places are, but that's something you should always keep in mind. If you're blown away by a salary, don't be so overly impressed by it that you don't peel back the layers to see what's actually happening behind the scenes. I think that the goal is that you want to obviously get the best starting salary you have too, but you want to make sure you're working at a place that has a track record for giving increases and fair wages and stuff like that over time. So it's always something else to keep in mind. I just think of that when you think of culture, that's kind of what I always think about as a culture of kind of growth and kind of enriching employees and stuff. So, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? I don't know if you had any last takeaways or any other things that you wanted to get into. I know you have you probably have a lot. I've seen a lot of your speeches, so I know you have a lot more, but but I don't want to take up all your time. So,
well, I'm excited this year. 2020 is going to be big. Just everybody can feel it. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of the year when hiring picks up again, I know a lot of the job seekers that I have coached recently are, they're not seeing offers come in December. December is just a rough time for hiring.
We've actually had a huge December.
What?
Yeah, it's like one of our biggest Decembers ever. Just
amazing.
Yeah, it's been crazy how many hires have happened.
That's fantastic.
Not to throw off your groove, but things are strong.
I love it.
Yeah,
I will always take good news over the strength of my groove. So I'm really looking forward to the new year and helping people be great self-advocates and walk into a place really confident, making a ton of money, and saving for retirement better, building generational wealth. I mean, this is all good, important stuff, and I'm excited about it.
Awesome. What was I going to say? I have to read an outro text, which always, this is for the podcast, so they'll clean this up so it sounds very, but we'll see if I can actually get through this without stuttering. So thanks for listening to Hirewell's Recruiting Insights podcast. If you like what you heard and want more insights from our recruiting experts, visit hirewell.com/recruiting-insights. And remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. That part with the .com/ that always gets me. So anyways, happy holidays, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's been great. Anytime you're in town, let me know. I'd love to have you on again. So
wonderful. Thanks, James.
Happy holidays.